The business-class cabin of Flight 789 shimmered under the golden glow of the late afternoon sun. Leather seats gleamed, champagne glasses caught fleeting glints of light, and passengers in crisp suits immersed themselves in spreadsheets and stock tickers. At the center of this polished world sat Alexander Sterling, exuding authority in a tailored suit that spoke of power, wealth, and control. Every movement, every glance, seemed calculated. Someone who had never known chaos without a plan. Across the aisle, Rebecca Hayes wrestled with her oversized carry-on while securing her daughter Lila's car seat. 7-year-old Lila clutched a unicorn-decorated backpack, eyes wide with excitement as she pressed against the window, mesmerized by the airport cruise below. Rebecca's caramel brown hair was pulled into a practical ponytail, streaked with fatigue from sleepless nights and relentless single motherhood. Alexander's sharp blue eyes followed her struggle, a subtle smirk forming. "Some people shouldn't be here," he murmured, loud enough for the neighboring passengers to hear. A soft chuckle rippled across the cabin. Rebecca forced a tight smile for Lila's sake. "We'll manage, sweetie," she whispered, adjusting straps and finally securing the seat. Her mind flickered to her past, a decorated career as a test pilot, the adrenaline of soaring above clouds, the precision of life-or-death decisions. That world was gone. Now her universe revolved around Lila. Bedtime stories, homework, scraped knees and scraped hearts. Alexander sipped his champagne, pretending disinterest, but his gaze never left her. "You really think this is your place?" he asked, tone smooth dismissive. Rebecca froze for a heartbeat, then met her daughter's eyes. Lila tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, don't let him ruin our sky adventure." Her daughter's innocent trust ignited something in Rebecca, a spark of defiance, a reminder of why she flew into chaos, not away from it. She straightened, lifted Lila into her seat, and smiled. "We're exactly where we're supposed to be, sweetie. Let's see the clouds up close." Alexander leaned back, curiosity flickering across his face as he watched the effortless tenderness between mother and daughter. But before he could process it further, the plane shuddered violently. Drinks spilled, lights flickered, and a sharp, acrid smell filled the cabin. Panic spread like wildfire. Captain Collins' voice cut through the chaos. "Attention all passengers. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Any trained pilots on board, please identify yourselves immediately." The cabin fell silent. Eyes darted, hearts raced. Business class smugness vanished. Only Rebecca's pulse quickened with recognition. A call to action that her training demanded. Lila's hand found hers, small and trusting. Memories of simulator alarms, emergency protocols, and split-second decisions surged back. This was the moment she had dreaded and prepared for, her skill and courage about to be tested. As she rose, calm and precise, Alexander's smirk vanished. For the first time, he wasn't in control. He saw her. Not the woman fumbling with luggage, but the pilot, the mother, the hero in waiting. Passengers watched, silent, sensing the shift. The woman they had judged moments ago now carried herself with authority born of experience and love. The plane, unstable and rattling, seemed to recognize it too. Each shudder met with her composed determination. She approached the cockpit, headset in hand, her eyes scanning the chaos of warning lights. The cabin held its collective breath. The storm ahead isn't just in the sky, it's inside the plane. And Rebecca is about to show everyone that true courage is measured not in wealth or status, but in the willingness to rise when it matters most. Rebecca Hayes' hands gripped the cockpit door, steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. Warning lights blinked red across every panel. Outside, the Atlantic stretched like a dark abyss, and storm clouds towered like giants ready to crush the plane. The turbulence wasn't a gentle shake. It was a violent, unpredictable force that rattled the fuselage and sent unsecured items flying. Captain Collins barely had time to speak before Rebecca's presence was felt. "Lieutenant Hayes?" he asked, recognizing her from the ID she handed over. The cockpit smelled of burnt electronics and fear, a sharp contrast to the clinical calm she had grown used to in her Air Force days. "Captain, tell me what's failing," she said, voice cutting through static and tension. Every word measured, calm. Every gesture precise. Collins gestured at the panels. "Hydraulic pressure fluctuating. Engine 2 overheating. Our first officer's out. food poisoning or allergic reaction. We can't hold the systems long, and the storm ahead isn't forgiving. Rebecca scanned the instruments, her military training kicking in. Systems she hadn't touched in years were now her lifeline. She felt the familiar thrill of combat adrenaline, tempered by a mother's fierce protectiveness. Lila's small hand would be counting on her. She could not fail. Not now, not ever. Outside the window, lightning split the sky, illuminating the plane in stark, terrifying clarity. Rain lashed at the fuselage, blurring visibility. The aircraft pitched hard to starboard, a shudder ripping through every seat in the cabin. In that moment, the entire business class cabin felt the magnitude of the crisis. Alexander Sterling, once poised and untouchable, gripped his armrest with white knuckles, eyes wide, realizing for the first time that his wealth, status, and intellect meant nothing in the face of raw danger. "Captain, we need an emergency landing," Rebecca said, her voice steady, commanding. "We can make Shannon, Ireland, if we start descending immediately. I'll manage navigation and communications. You fly." Collins gave a curt nod, handing over the controls with a trust born of desperation. The cockpit became a symphony of precise commands, flashing lights, and the low hum of struggling engines. Rebecca called out readings, adjusted systems, coordinated with air traffic control, and plotted descent rates, all while her mind ticked through every possible contingency. Meanwhile, back in business class, Lila squeezed her mother's hand tightly. She opened her sketchbook and began to color a fighter jet, her small fingers pressing crayons with focus. "Mom, just like we practiced," she whispered, as if her concentrated calm could help her mother navigate the chaos. Alexander's jaw had tightened. The woman he had judged, dismissed, and almost ridiculed was saving a plane full of people. Every arrogant assumption he had made shattered in an instant. His own fear now gave way to awe. "Rebecca," Captain Collins muttered over the headset, "your calculations are perfect. You're keeping us alive." She allowed herself one small nod. "We're not out of this yet," she reminded him. The storm outside was relentless, the aircraft fragile, and every decision now a delicate balance between life and death. Lightning flashed again, thunder roaring like the judgment of gods above. Rebecca adjusted engine throttles, double-checked flaps, and guided the plane inch by inch through the murky clouds. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her hands were steady, her focus unbreakable. In the cabin, Alexander leaned forward, eyes fixed on the cockpit, heart hammering. The contrast between his world of power and her raw courage had never been clearer. And he couldn't look away. The plane tilted hard again, a cry of metal echoing across the fuselage, but Rebecca's calm voice cut through. "Hold steady, descending 10,000 feet. Prepare for emergency approach. The storm is only the beginning. Systems are failing, passengers are panicking, and Rebecca must now face the ultimate test, landing the plane alive, with Lila and 200 souls depending on her. The next moments will define courage in ways no boardroom or battlefield ever could." The plane shuddered violently, a deafening roar of metal and wind filling the cabin as lightning cleaved the sky outside. Business class passengers gripped their armrests, white-knuckled and wide-eyed, their polished exteriors stripped away by sheer terror. Every flash of lightning revealed faces twisted with panic, and Rebecca Hayes' knuckles were pale from tension. But her breath remained steady. Years of Air Force discipline surged through her veins. This was no simulation. Every second, every decision mattered. Below, Lila clutched her mother's hand, her small fingers drawing tiny planes mid-flight in her sketchbook. "Mom, look. This one's faster than the storm," she whispered, her wide eyes alight with innocent wonder. Rebecca forced a smile that masked her adrenaline-fueled focus. "That's right, baby. Just like you, never give up." The cabin lights flickered, dimming the interior and casting eerie shadows across frightened faces. Across the aisle, Alexander Sterling, normally composed and untouchable, felt the crushing weight of helplessness. His wealth, his sharp suits, his meticulously crafted image, none of it mattered now. He watched Rebecca with awe as she moved with precision, commanding the cabin's attention without a word of arrogance. Her calm authority cut through the chaos like a lighthouse in a storm. "Altitude dropping too fast. Wind shear hitting us hard." Captain Collins' voice rang out from the cockpit, taut with urgency. Rebecca's mind raced through calculations she hadn't done in years. Flaps, thrust, hydraulics. Every system's margin of error measured in feet and seconds. One mistake, one delayed call, and the Atlantic would claim them all. Hold steady. Maintain 33,000. Engine 2 monitor temperature. Hydraulic system, stabilize at 45%. Balance now. In the cabin, panic rippled uncontrollably. Passengers whispered prayers, some wept, others gripped loved ones silently. Alexander's confidence crumbled entirely. The woman he had dismissed, mocked, and judged, now embodied courage, expertise, and unshakable resolve. His pride felt shallow in comparison. Rebecca glanced at Lila. "Close your eyes for a moment, baby," she said softly, keeping her voice calm. Lila's large brown eyes refused to obey. She needed to see her mother's strength, to anchor herself in Rebecca's courage. That trust became Rebecca's anchor too. She could not falter. Not for herself, not for anyone, and especially not for her daughter. Minutes felt like hours. The plane bucked violently again, tossing a service trolley down the aisle. Drinks spilled across polished tray tables. A collective gasp rose from passengers, a symphony of fear. Alexander felt his chest tighten. He had misjudged everything. This was not wealth, status, or image. It was heart, skill, and courage. Rebecca had them all. She coordinated with air traffic control. Voice calm yet commanding. Flight 789. Declaring emergency. Partial system failure. Request vectors to Shannon, Ireland. 2 engines, unstable hydraulics, 200 souls aboard. Approach speed calculations incoming. Collins nodded, trusting her fully. "I've got your back." Rebecca's authority extended to the cockpit, every call-out precise, every adjustment life-saving. The storm battered the plane relentlessly. Rain lashed the windows with the ferocity of a battering ram. Lightning illuminated struggling engines, and the acrid scent of burning electronics filled the cabin. Turbulence rippled through the fuselage like a living thing, testing the limits of everyone aboard. Rebecca's hands danced across throttles and instruments, issuing commands with military precision, her calmness a lifeline for terrified passengers. Across the aisle, Alexander swallowed hard. He had judged her harshly, yet here she was, the heartbeat of survival. Helplessness gave way to awe. This woman, a single mother, had become the guardian of life itself in the most extreme circumstances. Rebecca called out to Collins. "Descent planning, check wind shear adjustments. Monitor hydraulic fluctuations. We hold 33,000 until vectors confirmed. Ready for approach once conditions stabilize." The storm raged, each second a battle. And in that chaos, the stark truth hit Alexander. This was not about power, money, or status. True strength, he realized, came from courage, skill, and love. And Rebecca had both in abundance. The storm intensifies. Hydraulic systems are failing. Rebecca must now execute a perilous descent, facing the full force of nature. Every moment will test courage, skill, and trust. Lives hang in the balance, and the next decision may define destiny. The cabin of Flight 789 shook violently as the storm unleashed its fury. Rain pounded the fuselage. Wind shear pushed the aircraft sideways, and lightning lit the cabin in jagged flashes. Every passenger gripped their armrests, white-knuckled, hearts racing. But Rebecca Hayes, single mother, ex-fighter pilot, remained the calm eye in this storm, her sharp eyes scanning both her daughter and the crew. Hydraulic pressure fluctuating. Engine 2 is dropping to critical. Captain Collins' voice was strained but steady. Rebecca's gaze flicked to Lila, 7 years old, gripping her unicorn backpack tightly. "Mom, I'm scared," she whispered. "You're safe," Rebecca said, her voice calm but commanding. "Stay with me. We're going to make it." Across the aisle, Alexander Sterling, the CEO who had judged her harshly moments ago, felt helpless. His wealth and status were meaningless here. Yet, watching Rebecca coordinate with the crew, giving precise, unwavering instructions, he realized she had become the lifeline everyone depended on. His arrogance dissolved into awe. The plane lurched again. Drinks toppled, trays smashed, screams erupted. Yet Rebecca's voice cut through the chaos. "Seatbelts fastened. Keep your eyes on me. Secure all loose items." Every word became an anchor. Lila's small hand found hers, squeezing tightly, grounding her even as the plane trembled. In the cockpit, Rebecca relayed critical information over the headset. Flight 789 declaring emergency. Partial system failure, hydraulic instability. 2 engines operational, 200 souls aboard. Request vectors to Shannon Airport for emergency landing. Collins nodded at her with a mixture of relief and trust. Keep it up. We can't afford a single mistake. Every second felt stretched to eternity. Rebecca's mind raced, processing instruments, turbulence, wind, and cabin safety simultaneously. She guided flight attendants, reassured panicked passengers, and provided clear updates to the cockpit. Lila watched her mother, wide-eyed, inspired by the calm authority in her voice. The storm hit harder. Lightning struck nearby, making the fuselage shudder violently. Wind pushed the plane off its glide path. Rebecca called out precise adjustments, her voice slicing through the roaring engines. Altitude 5000, 3500, 3000. Maintain 145 knots. Hydraulic pressure stable at 50%. Begin approach corrections. Passengers followed her cues, some copying her breathing, some clutching the arm of their seatmates, silently drawing courage from her composure. Alexander could hardly move, frozen by a mix of fear and admiration. The woman he had dismissed as delicate, refined, and unfit for this chaos was now their only hope of survival. Finally, the faint lights of Shannon appeared through the gray curtain of rain. Collins gripped the yoke, his hands shaking slightly. Rebecca's precise calls guided him with military clarity. Flaps at 30, wind correction 10 degrees right, stabilize approach. The wheels hit the runway with a bone-rattling thump, sparking against the wet asphalt. Reverse thrusters roared, brakes screeched, and the aircraft skidded but remained upright. Relief washed through the cabin. Lila collapsed into her mother's arms, shaking but safe. Applause erupted, mingled with tears, hugs, and whispered words of gratitude. Alexander's face was pale, awestruck. The woman he had misjudged had saved them all, redefining courage and heroism in a way he could never have imagined. Pride, status, and judgment vanished. The plane is grounded safely, but the story isn't over. In the aftermath, gratitude, fear, and awe intermingle. Alexander must decide. Remain a passive observer or connect with the woman whose courage changed everything. The wheels of Flight 789 screeched to a halt, and the cabin erupted in a chaotic mixture of relief, applause, and tears. Emergency crews surrounded the plane, lights flashing, fire trucks edging closer, but the passengers' focus remained on the woman who had orchestrated their survival. Rebecca Hayes cradled Lila in her arms, brushing wet curls from her daughter's forehead. Every inch of her body ached, her nerves still thrumming from the near catastrophe, but her focus was unbroken. Across the aisle, Alexander Sterling's hands shook as he finally found his voice. "Mom, sorry, he swallowed hard, realizing that no amount of eloquence could express what he felt. His eyes never left Rebecca. The CEO who had commanded boardrooms with ruthless precision now felt entirely powerless in comparison. The other passengers stood, some applauding, some staring, some whispering fervently. "That woman, she saved us all," murmured a businessman, his tablet still open on spreadsheets that suddenly felt meaningless. Another mother clutched her child, tears streaming, nodding in quiet gratitude. Rebecca lowered Lila onto the seat, giving her daughter a reassuring squeeze. Then she rose, every motion measured, commanding, like a leader stepping into a war room. Alexander hesitated, then approached, trying to reconcile the woman he had dismissed with the hero before him. "I owe you an apology," Alexander stammered, his polished tone cracking under raw sincerity. "I judged you foolishly. You saved all our lives." Rebecca's eyes met his, sharp and assessing, yet not unkind. "We all do what's necessary when it counts," she said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of authority and experience. "Fear can freeze you, or it can sharpen you. I chose the latter." He swallowed, humbled. "I've built companies, managed millions, thought I understood pressure, but I was wrong. I've never seen courage like that." A small smile flickered on Rebecca's face, not a concession, but a recognition. "Courage isn't about wealth, influence, or status," she replied softly. It's about knowing what matters and acting even when everything is against you. Passengers gathered around, curiosity and awe breaking the boundaries of social hierarchy. Someone handed Rebecca a damp towel. Another offered water. Alexander lingered, struggling with the unfamiliar vulnerability that fear and respect had stripped from him. Lila, sensing the tension, tugged at Rebecca's sleeve. "Mom, she's nice. Can we maybe invite her for dinner?" Rebecca laughed softly, the sound a warm, human counterpoint to the adrenaline still racing through her veins. Alexander blinked, stunned at the innocence and unfiltered courage in a 7-year-old's invitation. "Dinner?" he asked, unsure. "Yes," Lila insisted, bouncing slightly. "Daddy says sharing a meal makes you friends. You can come." Rebecca glanced at Alexander, weighing the absurdity of the suggestion against the extraordinary moment they had just survived. There was no boardroom negotiation, no contract, no deal, just a child's wisdom and the raw humanity of a shared ordeal. Finally, she nodded. "All right. Just somewhere simple. We need normalcy after this." Alexander exhaled, relief mingling with awe. "I can do simple," he said, a small grin breaking through his usual composed demeanor. "And thank you for everything." Outside, emergency crews moved efficiently, the storm still threatening the edges of the airport, but inside the cabin, something had shifted. Status, judgment, arrogance, they were meaningless. In their place stood recognition, humility, and the fragile beginnings of connection forged in fire. They leave the airport, stepping into the drizzle that softens Shannon's tarmac. The world outside continues, but inside, 3 lives are forever changed. How will this connection grow? And what lessons will Alexander learn about courage, judgment, and humanity? The storm outside had softened into a relentless drizzle, painting the runway in a silver haze. Rebecca Hayes stood at the top of the airplane stairs, Lila clinging to her side, her tiny fingers curled around Rebecca's wet sleeve. Around them, the emergency crews moved with military precision, but Rebecca's attention was elsewhere. Her eyes found Alexander Sterling, who lingered at the base of the stairs, soaked, shoes muddy, and utterly disarmed by the woman before him. "You saved everyone," he said, voice trembling despite the usual firmness that defined him in boardrooms. "Not just lives, but you saved dignity. Mine included." Rebecca's gaze didn't waver. "Dignity comes from what we do in moments that matter, not from titles or suits," she said quietly. Her voice, calm yet authoritative, carried across the scattered passengers and the hum of engines winding down. Lila tugged at her mother's jacket. "Mom, can we invite her to lunch? She's funny and she's nice." Alexander blinked. The invitation, so simple, so human, broke through the final barrier he had built around his life of power and control. He swallowed hard. "Lunch, yes. Of course. I would like that." Inside the cabin, passengers were still murmuring, faces pale but grateful. The hedge fund manager who had once smirked at Rebecca's presence, now offered a nod of respect. Even the flight attendants, their professional composure cracking, whispered among themselves about the courage of the single mom who had stepped into a cockpit, into chaos, into the impossible. Rebecca helped Lila onto the shuttle bus, steady despite her exhaustion. Alexander followed, silent, as if the simple act of walking beside her was a challenge to everything he thought he knew about life and power. Each step became a meditation. He measured nothing in dollars or influence now, only in the courage of the woman who refused to falter. "Rebecca," he said at last, voice low, nearly lost in the drizzle. "I judged you before. I saw a woman in business class and assumed weakness. I was wrong. Dead wrong. You're incredible." Rebecca's lips curved into a faint smile. "We all rise when faced with what truly matters," she replied. Her eyes softened as they landed on Lila. "And sometimes, it takes a child to remind us what matters most." Lila giggled, holding up her unicorn backpack like a trophy. "See? I told you. Mommy's brave and so are you." The small voice carried more power than any corporate title. Alexander found himself laughing, genuinely, a sound he hadn't realized he'd forgotten in years. The shuttle moved, wheels splashing through puddles, carrying them away from the tarmac and toward a small, unremarkable hotel. Inside, the warmth of fluorescent lights replaced the cold metal and fear of the airplane. Rebecca guided Lila to a table, ordering simple food: chicken fingers, fries, apple juice, small comforts that somehow felt like a feast after the storm. Alexander took a seat, unsure, fumbling with a napkin as he watched Rebecca and Lila interact. Each laugh, each explanation of aerodynamics using French fries, chipped away at his polished exterior. He realized that no deal, no negotiation, no corporate triumph could ever match the gravity of what he was witnessing. Real courage, real humanity, real love. Rebecca caught his gaze. "The world measures success in wealth, titles, and influence," she said, soft yet firm. "But the real victories are invisible. They're in choices, in integrity, in protecting the people who rely on you when no one's watching." Alexander nodded, words failing him. The adrenaline of survival had faded, replaced by awe and humility. For the first time, he saw a world not defined by numbers or power, but by human connection. He reached for his glass of water, and for the first time in years, he felt like a man starting to understand what truly matters. Outside, the rain falls gently on Shannon, Ireland, but inside, a small dinner table glows with laughter and warmth. One final decision remains. Will Alexander fully embrace this humanity, or retreat to the fortress of power he's always known? And what will Rebecca choose: trust, forgiveness, or staying in solitude? Rain streaked the hotel windows, tapping a relentless rhythm, but inside, the room was warm. Rebecca Hayes sat across from Alexander Sterling, Lila nestled between them, her tiny hands smeared with ketchup as she animatedly described the physics of flying French fries. Alexander's sharp corporate armor had vanished. His damp, creased suit felt irrelevant now. Every instinct of control faltered under the reality of the woman and child before him. Courage, he realized, wasn't in boardrooms or contracts. It was here, in a mother who had faced death for her daughter. You really saved everyone," Alexander said, voice tight. "Not just the passengers, but everyone. You walked into that cockpit with nothing but Lila's hand guiding you." Rebecca met his gaze, calm yet unyielding. "I promised Lila I'd always keep her safe," she said simply. "Everything else is just noise." Lila clapped her hands. "Mommy's a superhero. Even cooler than the F-22. Alexander chuckled, a sound rare to him, warmed by her innocence. He realized heroism wasn't about recognition, it was heart. Rebecca had it in abundance. Outside, the storm softened, but inside, tension lingered, the residue of a flight that could have ended in disaster. Alexander studied Rebecca, not the single mom he had judged, but the protector, the unwavering human being who chose courage over comfort. "Rebecca," he said, voice careful, "I've spent my life climbing ladders I didn't need, winning battles that didn't matter. Watching you, it makes me realize I've been blind. I want to be better. I want to help. I don't know how yet, but I want to try." A flicker of trust warmed Rebecca's chest, rare and unguarded. Not business trust, but human trust, the kind that could rebuild walls. Lila leaned forward, eyes shining. "Daddy says you can come play with us whenever you want. He says there's always room for one more friend at our table." Alexander's chest tightened. That innocent gesture outweighed all his empires. I'd like that," he whispered. The room seemed to exhale. Rebecca sipped water, allowing herself relief. Lila leaned against her, warmth anchoring her mother's heart. Alexander, at the table's edge, felt humility no boardroom could teach. He had seen real courage today, strength that protected, not dominated. Lila laughed, flicking a fry across her plate. Rebecca joined, Alexander's chuckle following. In that moment, three unlikely souls, mother, child, humbled CEO, shared connection, trust, laughter born from survival, and the quiet truth that humanity matters more than status, money, or fear. Rebecca looked at Alexander, firm yet gentle. "You start by letting go of control as a measure of respect. Real respect is earned by courage and heart." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I finally understand." Outside, the rain softened, the runway lights shimmering through the mist. The emergency landing would be remembered by all passengers. But for Rebecca, Lila, and Alexander, they remembered the lessons no classroom could teach. That the bravest act is showing up for the ones who need you most, even when fear grips your heart. Sometimes that choice, simple, human, fearless, was enough to change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's spread courage and hope to every corner of the world.